Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Gyana Timidandasya Niranjanan Salakayam Dakshun Militam Jaina Susmai Sri Guruve Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobishtam Statitam Jaina Bhutale Sayam Rupagada Mayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Parakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam. What's the next one? Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakan Vitangscha He Krishna Koruna Sindho Dinabando Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhano Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakapachu Vishcha Kripa Sindhu Vachapati Dhanam Bhavane Bhyo Vaishnavi Bhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narotamam Devyam Sarasatam Vyasam Tato Jayamudidayet Nasta Presho Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Shevaya Bhagavad Yuttama Shloke Bhakti Bhavati Naistaki. So I'm trying to decide if forgetting the line of the Mangalachara verse was old age or too much ecstasy. Sometimes it's difficult to distinguish. But in relation to the too much ecstasy, so I just returned from a week in Dallas where they had the Rath Yatra festival. And so today I thought we'd do something a little bit non-traditional in terms of the morning class, and I would just speak about my experience and my realizations about my visit to Sri Sri Radha Kalachandji Dham. And also our Melissa was just there fairly recently. Did you get that picture I sent?
Yeah.
Okay. So I just happened to be in the basement where there is a dryer in the closet back by the furnace in the AC unit. And I saw the Krishna House devotees cutting vegetables. So I immediately took a picture and sent it to Sandani. Said, send that to Melissa. But she was just recently cutting those vegetables also with great alacrity. So originally I had called one of my friends at the Dallas temple to arrange for Bala Gopinath to have a place to stay while he was going across country to an art conference in Alachua. And he stayed there one night, and then on his way back, he stayed there another night. And the friend I was calling, he didn't answer, so I called someone else. And then he told me, oh, you should come to Rath Yatra. They were having Rath Yatra last Saturday. And then the person who I'd been trying to get a hold of called me back to arrange for the place to stay. His name was Maturnath. And so we did that. He said, oh, you should come to Rath Yatra. So that was twice, boom, boom. I was thinking, well, maybe I should go to Rath Yatra. And I started thinking about it. And there's a line in this song, The Wichita Lineman. It was a big hit for Glenn Campbell, but was not written by him. And one of the lines goes, and though I need a small vacation. And I was thinking, yes, I could probably use a small vacation. So it was arranged and decided, all right, I'll go. And then I found out that Gauravani was coming to be the headliner entertainment for the stage show. And I thought, well, there's a guitar player in Dallas. His name is Sankirtan Das. He'll be probably playing on the stage, so there's no need for me. And then it turns out Sankirtan had already booked a gig for that evening, and he couldn't be there. So then I started making more phone calls, and I kind of wormed my way into being in the band called Gauravani. And then my old friend Purusharta is the bass player. I've known Purusharta since I was 21 years old. He was a lot younger then too. And then it turns out the drummer his name is Rishikesh, but everybody calls him Rishi. So Rishi's been my friend since he was a child. We were there in Dallas together, and he has turned out to be an excellent drummer, just a fine musical artist. And so they were bringing him too. So that rhythm section of guitar, bass, and drums, we had actually done a little tour in Florida for this fellow named Kirtan Rabbi out of New York, a Jewish rabbi, but he plays harmonium and he sings like the sacred Jewish songs and some Vedic chants. He's kind of like where the the Ganges meets the Jordan River sort of confluence. So, and he's kind of well known in New York, and he's known in the yoga kirtan scene also. And he hired us to play some synagogues. And then some of the devotees came and they were wearing yarmulkes and like, oh, okay. You can take the devotee out of the synagogue, but you can never take the Jew out of the devotee sort of thing, especially the New Yorkers. So I was like, oh yeah, they wear yarmulkes too. Okay. They move freely between both worlds. One time Srila Prabhupada said, when he began his preaching in New York, and many Jewish young men and women were coming to Krishna consciousness, he said that, yes, our Krishna consciousness is a Jewish concern. And then he also said that the Catholics become devotees because they are pious, and the Jewish people become devotees because they're intelligent. He didn't say they were pious, he said they were intelligent. So anyway, that was Prabhupada's experience preaching in New York with Catholics and Jews. So, the people from that. And then he said the leaders of those religions were becoming alarmed that their young people were no longer taking to the religion of their parents, but were becoming Hare Krishna devotees. So that is our Srila Prabhupada, very expert preacher, and he knew who he was dealing with. So anyway, so I drove there. It's a very long way. It's 1,000 miles. And I thought I would drive as far as I could and then take rest in the van and just continue. Ended up driving all the way through, straight through, which was, I found to be miraculous for a man of my age, temperament, and health concerns. So, and I drove straight back too all the way. So I went to Mangal Artik. I arrived late on Tuesday night, and I went to Mangal Artik the next morning and got to take the darshan of the deities of Dallas, Sri Sri Radha Kalachandji. Now, Kalachandji is a very interesting deity, sort of unique in our movement. And the story of Kalachandji has been told in different ways. They used to have this sort of write-up on the deity that they had posted in the hallway. But most of it is not factual. There's a lot of creative license that was taken in writing that. But the story is when there was a devotee named Kausalya, I forget there was another Mataji with her. This is in India, 1970, when Srila Prabhupada brought for the first time a bunch of Western devotees to India, a group of 40 devotees. And they preached up a storm. And Prabhupada called the Western devotees his dancing white elephants. And the Indian people were just astonished to see Western Vaishnavas. Because generally, traditionally, they were thinking of Westerners like the British. They're malechas. They're not Krishna conscious. And they're very, they're below the Vedic, Brahman, Kshatriya, Vaishya, Shudra, they're below that, the Westerners. So they're malechas outside of Vedic culture because their habits are unclean and they're very much ensconced in the bodily concept of life. Of course, those same Britishers took over India with just a very small amount of men, somehow or other. And then gradually India gained her freedom again. But what the British left behind was the Byzantine bureaucracy that India is now infamous for. But the British were very organized in terms of, legal and educational, just like we've been reading in Prabhupada Lilamrita. about the British living in their separate sections of Calcutta, which was the capital of the British capital of the Indian subcontinent. Anyway, so Prabhupada astonished the Indian people with his Western Vaishnavas, fair-skinned. So Kausalya, and I can't remember the other Mataji's name, they were in Jaipur. Prabhupada sent them to Jaipur, which is kind of the, Indian headquarters for deity carving, marble deities. And they were ordering deities for various temples. And then somehow they found in this one place, I don't know whether it was a shop or a museum, that they found this deity of Kalachandji, who Prabhupada named, but at that time he wasn't Kalachandji. He's a rather large, heavy deity, and he has a big round head. And he was being used as a doorstop in this shop. He was holding open the door because he's a great weight. And they asked the proprietor if he would donate the deity to ISKCON. And I'm not sure whether he was donated or paid for, but he was acquired for ISKCON. And Prabhupada was very happy to get Kalachandji, and he was dispatched to Dallas Temple. And there was another pastime. Now, apparently this deity was a Vrindavan area deity. And so many of the Vrindavan area deities were moved from Vrindavan to Jaipur during the Middle Ages, during the Muslim years. Like Radha Govinda is the main deity of Jaipur. Well, that was Rupa Goswami's deity in Vrindavan. Sri Govinda Gopinath Madana Mohan. And Sanatana Goswami's Madan Mohan was similarly moved. It's in a place called Karoli, now halfway between Vrindavan and Jaipur. So apparently, as legend goes, Sri Kalachandji was a Vrindavan area deity who had been moved from Vrindavan to Jaipur, and then his worship was discontinued and his identity was lost. And he ended up in this shopkeeper's place, holding open the door. And then by Lord Krishna's arrangement and his pastime, he was turned over to Srila Prabhupada, who sent him to Dallas. And then, and he's big black marble Krishna deity, big moon face. Kalachandji means black moon. So he has a very big moon-like face, very amazing. And the lighting, the arrangement on the altar is extremely beautiful. They have these giant peacock feathered domes made out of stained glass. They're really gorgeous. And the whole temple room was done over and renovated in the 1980s when Tamal Krishna Maharaj took over managing the Dallas temple. Formerly, that temple room had been the basketball court of the Baptist church, which is the temple property. And that property was acquired on the cheap by the devotees in 1971 or 72. The Baptists were no longer worshiping there. Their worship was finished. So when I first came to the temple, it was still somewhat reminiscent of the basketball court. It had some big windows and a concrete floor, and it wasn't very opulent. But Radha Kalachandji were there, and they were very beautiful on the altar. Then the whole temple was renovated with these expert craftsmen from New Vrindavan who were expert at making these plaster molds. And their expertise was acquired in building Prabhupada's palace. So that team came, and some local devotees came together, and they made these giant pillars, and then they go up and across the curved ceiling in arches. And the ceiling is painted like the sky, blue with clouds. It's very beautiful. Actually, that was redone. It was originally done in the 80s, and then again, it was done in the 2000s. There was this tiny little Iranian lady. She was an artist, and she was very attracted to Krishna consciousness. And then she took on this job, climbing way up there. The ceiling is very high. It's a basketball court. It has to be high enough for the ball to go everywhere. And she repainted those, and then she climbed up on the altar. It's about 20 feet in the air, and repainted the ceiling above the deities also. She did this nice service. I don't know whatever happened to her. But she wanted to serve Krishna, and they engaged her in that way. So the temple room is very beautiful. And then those plaster mold pillars and arches are painted a dark brown color, and they look like wood. It looks like carved wood. And the altar is similarly made of those, with a main arch over Kalachandji, and then two smaller arches. You have Gaurnitai on the left and Jagannath, Baladev, Subhadra on the right. And then you have Chota Radha Kalachandji, the small Radha Kalachandji deities, or this black marble. And then there's another set of brass Radha Krishna deities known as Radha Govinda. So very beautiful, extremely beautiful, really expert lighting arrangement they have with spotlights. Yes.
How tall is Kalachandji?
Well, everything's bigger in Texas. The Kalachandji's probably close to 4 feet tall. But then he's also on a base, a square base. And, but actually, Radha Neela Madhava in Houston, they're taller. You've been there. They're really big. Neela Madhava's head is so big that when the pujaris, they make the hair for the deities, it takes 2 wigs sewn together to make the hair for Neela Madhava. And they're so tall. Well, I haven't been there since they're in the new temple, but in the old temple, they were just on the floor instead of way up on a pedestal. They're just on the floor because it's tall. It's very tall. You pujaris are like trying to dress the deities, getting up on a ladder. So everything's bigger in Texas. That's what they say, including the false ego of the Texans. They have an expression there. It's hard to be humble when you're from Texas. I am from Texas. There's another joke about big false egos. It's to do with the Argentinians. How do you kill an Argentinian? You get them up on top of their false ego and you push them off. Woo! So those are some different jokes about, but there's big false egos everywhere. Make no mistake about that. That is a universal phenomenon. As one devotee wrote a song, "The living entity, how foolish he can be," because he thinks he's very big. So it was very nice to take. And the temple room floor is, how we do the pattern of light and dark marble, like in Vrindavan temple, it's black and white. Here we have the orange and white, the pink and white. And there, it's a parquet wood floor with a dark and light diamond pattern like this. And so it's kind of comfortable to walk on compared to marble. It's not cold and hard. It's more like kind of warm. And they've redone that floor, refinished it many times, several times. I was witness to that. And then around the edges of the walls of they have these paintings, these giant paintings. They're Peshwa style Indian paintings by, what's that artist's name? Escapes me at the moment. Famous Indian artist. B.G. Sharma. It's B.G. Sharma, Udaipur. And that's what he's from Udaipur. That's what it says, B.G. Sharma, Udaipur. And these paintings are like, 10 feet tall by 12 feet wide. And they're like that Indian style tempera paint on cloth, and they're mounted to the walls, and they're Krishna Lila. And there's like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, like 7 or 8 of them. And they're really very, very beautiful. And they have lights over them so that the lights shine only on the painting. And you can't see the light in your face, but it's just on the paintings from above. And so generally the temple room is very dark and mysterious, like a giant cave. And then those paintings are lit, and then the deities are lit. So it's very mystical, and it's very inspiring, and a great place to chant japa. And a great place to have kirtan, like do good kirtan hall. So I took the darshan of the deity, and then they have built a samadhi mandir for Tamal Krishna Goswami, who spent a great deal of his time there in Dallas. Then there's a park next to the temple, like an empty couple of lots where you could have built 2 or 3 houses there. And there's pecan trees in the park, and it's shady, and there's grass. And then there's the samadhi, which is built like the samadhis in Vrindavan, the kind of the dome shape, where the dome kind of comes out, the points at the 4 corners. It has pillars in front, and they got these artists from India. We called them the samadhi guys. They do this carving with wet concrete, and it's really cool, and it really looks very Indian and very Jaipur, Vrindavan kind of a design. And that samadhi is probably about about 10 by 10, and then it's probably about 15 feet high, and it's very gorgeous, and it's up on a pedestal with marble, black marble, with steps leading up to it. And they had planted a couple of tamal trees there. Devotee in Houston had a tamal tree in his yard somehow, and they got a branch fell down and was in the yard, and some saplings sprouted up from that, and they brought them up. I was there when they installed them on either side of the samadhi. They have these concrete lions with one paw up in the air, like you see in Prabhupada's Vyasasana in Vrindavan. Those lions are about 3.5 feet tall or so, and they're really cool. So it's a very beautiful samadhi. And so I was there, it was about 5 or 6 years ago. And Dhirodatta Swami, who comes there a lot, I think he's there now. He came just after the Rath Yatra. He has many disciples there, and he presided over the planting of the tamal trees. And somehow they didn't do well. I think it gets too cold for them. But as it turns out, we have a tamal tree here. Just outside of Kamudvan's room, there's a tamal tree on this side of the wall. And it's very big and done very well. So we have the best tamal tree that I know of in America. I haven't seen another one anywhere else. In Alachua, they also have a Parijata tree with the little tiny flowers. That's really, yeah. Parijatas are really cool. Well, Hawaii, Tulsi grows in the form of giant trees like sequoia Tulsis. Because of the climate is so nice, it doesn't get cold. High 80 to 85, low 60 to 65. That's it. And one thing that really struck me, having been here in Arizona for 7 years and only going outside a couple of times, but it had really been raining a lot there, unusually a lot, and everything was very green. So the street that the temple is on, Gurley Avenue, is lined with trees, oak trees or acorns in the very one devotee was cleaning up the acorns from his front yard. And so everything is very green. And driving from Arizona to Dallas, you're in desert all the way till you get to about Sweetwater, Texas, which is about maybe 250, 300 miles from Dallas. And then all of a sudden everything changes. There's trees, there's grass, instead of just desert. You know, in West Texas, they have desert, they have giant windmills. They do a lot of wind power there, and those windmills are everywhere. And the other thing they have is those pumps that pump oil from the ground. It's got a little thing that goes around, the pump goes up and down. So as soon as you get to a certain point, then everything becomes green, like normal, non-desert. And so Dallas, it was very green. All the trees, leaves, it's springtime. And the temple street is so beautiful because it's lined with trees up and down and grass. And one devotee actually, Narottam Ananda, he lives right next door to the Krishna house. He has the fake grass in his yard because he was tired of struggling with his yard, getting it to grow and the weeds and brown and it looks really good. And then next door to him is a devotee named Dharma, and he's got his Arizona style. It's all gravel. I go, oh, you got an Arizona yard. He said, yeah, I got tired of it, and it looks nice next to the one with the fake grass. So, like the AstroTurf. And then next to that, on the same side of the street, is an old duplex where Mother Chandravali, who's been the pujari there for decades, they just celebrated her 80th birthday. And she lives in one side of that duplex. The other side there was a Mexican Mataji named Lakshmi, and she was a pujari for a long time. And then she kind of retired and moved in with her kids who lived, elsewhere in Dallas. So that was vacant. And that's where they let me stay. Did you stay in that house?
Probably at the end of the street.
Yeah, it's at the corner, right across the street from the sanctuary. And that was available. And my friend Maturnath arranged for me to stay there. Now there's this Chinese Mataji named Padma. And she's kind of she's a tough business gal. And she runs the temple with an iron fist and a steel whip. She's a real tough nut. But she's a very good manager. And she's married to Dhirodatta, who preached for years in Hong Kong. That's how they know each other. And he manages the restaurant. He's a very good manager. When he joined in Memphis with the Radha Damodar party, he had his own bar. So he was destined to be in the restaurant business. It was called Hot Mamas. And it was like a biker bar that he owned it and he ran it. And then he gave that up to become a devotee. And then he was in Hong Kong for many years, managing the temple there. Then he came to Dallas and took over managing and running the restaurant. And things have just improved and improved and improved since he got there. Then Padma came and they got married. And then she became the supreme absolute controller of temple finances. And since she was taken over, also things have increased massively. Also, they have these brownies in the restaurant that she makes. Padma is like an expert cook. I mean, Maha expert cook. And she makes these brownies, and they are just to die for. They are so good. And when one of them was at our table when we were taking prasad, I managed to get a little corner of it. I didn't ever get a whole one. It was good. It was very nice. And the restaurant there is very nice. They have a semi-outdoor courtyard, but it's covered around the edges, and there are booths there, and they have seating inside, and they have another room called the Peacock Room where there's seating, and then they have the gift shop. And they're very successful. According to Dhirodatta, of course, he may be exaggerating a little bit, they generally get 100 for lunch and 100 for dinner. That's a lot more than we get here. But then they also have a metropolitan area of I think it's 7 million people. And a lot more cool people and vegetarians. They don't really bill themselves as vegan, but if you search vegan on Google for Dallas, then they come up top of the list. Because we were searching vegan restaurants, and then that came up. It's a very wonderful project. Now, since the last time I've been there, they've increased in a lot of ways. They have a lot of Indian people there, and a lot of Indian devotees, initiated devotees, who live in the neighborhood. And the current figure is there is an astounding 67 houses around the temple that are filled with devotees, devotee-owned houses. The temple used to own more houses, but they gradually sold them to the devotees who lived in them. And then these Indian people came up. The neighborhood used to be an old Mexican barrio. So when they picked up the church and those little houses were cheap, I know Chaitanya Chandra has a very big house with a bunch of apartments. He paid $20,000 for that house. And there was one house around the corner from the temple where the old guy died in the house. And it was, the price of the house was $12,000. Small house. You know, you can't get those houses for those prices anymore. But gradually the Indian devotees, who are all grihastas, and you know, the Indian community, very successful, very well heeled. They're, you know, engineers, doctors, lawyers, professionals. They have gradually bought up those old funky old houses and fixed them up very nicely. I saw one house when I was driving somewhere and I couldn't believe it. I was going to the Walmart Supercenter to get some yogurt. And there was this house made out of white brick, and it was about at least 100 feet long and, you know, 30 feet wide and 2 stories on this corner, just a block from the temple. This massive mothership of a house, a McMansion of a house. And then on the side of the house is painted in a circle, Jai Radhe, which they have painted on the trees on the temple street. Just like in Vrindavan, someone had done that, painted Jai Radhe on all the trees. So they did this in Dallas too. I have mixed feelings about painting the trees like that, but they're there, painted in red and yellow in Sanskrit letters, Jai Radhe. So Jai Radhe was painted, you know, in about a circle about that big on the side of the house. And I go, well, that's one of the devotees for sure. This giant white brick structure, it was inconceivable. And then it's surrounded by chain link fence with a razor wire around the top. The neighborhood, you know, a little tough sometimes in that neighborhood. And there's a post office building just catty corner from the temple. It's like a 4-story building. It was the old post office, and then the devotees purchased that. And next to that's like a beauty parlor and a laundromat. And like a church's chicken is on the corner. And they purchased that building. It's a large building, and they've gutted it, and they're planning to build apartments or condos or something inside of it. But when I used to go there on my journeys, I used to stay in the post office building because it was vacant. And there was another devotee there, Bhakta Steve, and he stayed on the 2nd floor, and I stayed on the 3rd floor. We each had our own floor. So, and we managed, there was a room there, and we put a lock on the door so I could lock it up. And sometimes the homies would get in. So, you know what they say, real estate, real estate, real estate. The temple is very successful because of having all the devotees live around the temple. Now they have a similar phenomena in Alachua, where they have all these devotees living in houses. But all those devotee houses in Dallas are like within 1 square mile. And in Alachua, they're in like, 50 square miles scattered around. And they have, over 1,000 devotees in Alachua, easily. 1,000 to 1,500, I don't know the number. They say over 500 families. But somehow that has become like the secret of success to that temple, because they have depth of community and strength of community there around the temple. And those devotees, those Indian devotees, they're initiated devotees. They're pujaris. They don't live in the temple, but they do Mangal Artik, they dress the deities, they're in the restaurant, they're cooking, they're organizing, they're doing so many things. And for the Ratha Yatra, they had 300 volunteers from the Indian community, all devotees. And then they had a crew of 30 like ultra volunteers to take care and manage the other volunteers. So imagine what you can do with a crew of, over 300 people. Whereas count the number of people we have here, the number of devotees and the number of volunteers. If you had a four-arm form, you could probably count them on all your hands. Yeah, it's 20, right? So, and they had a fundraising campaign for the Rath Yatra, which is called Festival of Joy. So that's, a generic name for the outside world. They raised $100,000 to put on the Rath Yatra. And the Rath Yatra was in a park called Clyde Warren Park. Old Clyde, they named the park after him. And it's right in the center of downtown Dallas, not a few blocks away from Dealey Plaza where John F. Kennedy was assassinated. Dallas is that kind of a town. A tough place. And the park is an award-winning park. It was voted like the #2 park in America on some park poll. Where they rate, they have the, Lavunga's not here, they rate the beaches, and where Lavunga's from, they have the best beaches in America, white sand beaches on the Gulf Coast of Florida, where Sandamani is now on the Gulf Coast, being lapped by the warm waters of the Gulf of Mexico. Yes. So this park is kind of long and narrow, and it has a big stage, a permanently built concrete stage, and there's a cover over the stage. Then this long strip of park that's probably about, 100 feet wide or so, and then about at least 1,000 feet long. And it's all green grass. And then they have all these trees on the side, and there's this 2 paved areas on either side, and they have these green, like the French cafe tables, or like a metal table with 2 chairs, and they have tons of those on the sides in the shade. And I was thinking, wow, that's pretty cool, because you would think, somebody would try to steal all of those, the homies and stuff, but somehow or other they have all that there. And it's very nice, and the park was packed. In the center of the park, shoulder to shoulder. And they have all these booths, these tents, which they have to rent commercial tents because their city rules. The Festival of India can't set up there because they have to have union contractors and workers to put up the tents and stuff. So Festival of India, they can't use it. There they have to use the city's preferred contractors. And those tents are those commercial tents. You see, they're about like 20 by 20, and they come up to a big point in the middle, canvas tents, very nice. So they had all these tents there, these booths. On the right-hand side, the first booth was a pizza booth. Then North Indian cuisine. Next booth, South Indian cuisine. Next booth, they called it street food, but it was like samosas and these potato vadas that they put on a roll. I had some of those, very good, very nice, spicy. Then they have another one, the sweet booth. Then they had some other booths, some preaching booths. Then on the other side, at the far end, they had the prasadam for the volunteers tent, which they had breakfast and lunch. And then they said, yes, breakfast is over now. Lunch will be served at 11:30. I went there with Purushottam. And he says, I want to get some pizza, khichdi. So we ended up getting some pizza. And then they have more booths on that side. They had the free feast booth, which had serve outs on two different sides with big lines after the cart came back. Big, long lines, both sides going, and nice feasts. They had rice, sabji, halava, some chutney, and some potato rackets that you fry, the little thing you fry and they puff up. Potato rackets, we call them. I love those things. I didn't get any, but and then they had a cooking demonstration booth tent, and they had a yoga tent. You know, people all doing. You would have loved it, Chandrika. You would have been the chief instructor. And then they had the book booths, question and answer booth. You know, ask a monk. Rachavaji Maharaj was there, but different people were doing the question and answer booth. And so it was a lot of tents, and it was, you could say it was intense. And everything packed with people. Then they had the Rath Yatra cart, which was as one of Ratnabhushan's carts that was brought from North Carolina by an old Prabhupada disciple named Jagat Purush. I didn't know he was in the Rath Yatra cart business. He had another cart, and that was sold to Phoenix. So now Phoenix has one of Ratnabhushan's carts. And that was picked up last year by Ratna in Dallas and brought back here and brought to Phoenix. So nice Rath Yatra cart. There's a devotee from Chicago, a Prabhupada disciple named Gormani, African-American fellow. He has this giant Jagannath deity. I'm not sure what he's made of. I suspect he's made of styrofoam or something. But he's big. You know, he's about 10 feet tall and about 8 feet wide, long arms that stick way out about 10 feet. And he brought him in a truck, and they had him on the Rath Yatra cart. Wow. Big old Jagannath. I mean, Jagannath is the Lord of the universe, so he can manifest a large form. Then, in the parade, they had this South Indian group, and they all wore like a white top and white pants, and they're playing these drums. And these drums, the diameter of the drum head's about 3 feet, and they're two-sided drums. But they don't wear them like on straps on their shoulder. They tie ropes around their waist, this rope, and they hold those drums. And they had like 15 of those drums, and then one guy in a gong they had on a little trolley. The guy was playing the heck out of that gong. Bong, 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 bong. I mean, it's in you running for your life. And those drums, it was like cannons going off. And then they were in front of the parade, and then the very front, and then after that was, of course, the kirtan party. And there was a picture in the Dallas Morning News the next day of the kirtan party with none other than Kishore Krishna, also known as Kish, from Alachua. He plays these big whoppers, and he's really passionate and really animated, and he's an expert flute player. He's an expert mridanga player. He's an expert singer. I mean, he's got so much talent, and he jumps around, so much energy and enthusiasm. He's in his, I guess, probably about 40 now.
He's a great actor.
Yeah, he's incredible. He's an incredible devotee, and just full of physical potency and spiritual potency. And anyway, that picture made it into the Dallas Morning News from the Festival of Joy. So they did the parade downtown. I didn't go on the parade, but the downtown's kind of empty. So mostly they just disturb all the people who live in those high-rise apartment buildings downtown who complain, especially with that Indian drum group. You know, it's like there's cannons in the street. And then the Indian drum group later, they came to the stage and did their number. They don't need any microphones. And the sound guys who it's always my policy if I'm involved in some stage thing, I buddy up with the sound guys and get to know them. And they were very friendly. They were like running from their thing, covering their ears. It was so loud. And I joked with one soundman. I said, even if the mixer is turned off, those drums will still be pinning the meters, the VU meters on the mixer, pinned, even though the mixer is powered down. They didn't need any. And the guy banging the gong with a big stick, gong, gong. He was keeping the time. He was like the 4 on the floor guy. Dong, 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 dong. And then they would play, and even had a little kid was playing one of those drums. His drum was a little smaller, like a kid-sized drum. They play these rhythms, boom, 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 and they hit the other side with their hand, and this side, the low side they hit with a stick, and then the high side they hit with their hand, open hand. Boom, bing, boom, boom. And they do these rhythms, and they have a couple guys playing these little Indian snare drums and these little tiny sticks. It was far out. They had a dancer. They had some different dancing groups. They had the devotee teenage girls do a mridanga dance, and they're fun to watch. And they're nice. They're all sweet devotees. Then there was one Bengali lady. I don't remember her first name. Her last name was Bhattacharya. That's how I knew she was Bengali from her name. And she had they from some dance school, Indian dance school, and she was a very fine artist. It's some of the best Bharatanatyam / Kathak style dancing I've ever seen anyone do. Really very nice, really very nice, and she was very devotional also. And I went over to the side of the stage when they were done. I saw them. That was such an excellent performance you did, and the other 2 ladies, she were really good. Oh, she gave me a hug. Stand here and they get a picture. And the whole thing. It was just so sweet, very sweet. So then the headline act was Gauravani's band, as I was mentioning earlier. And Gauravani is extremely empowered. I can say nothing less than extremely empowered. He does one number where he narrates the pastime of Dhruva Maharaj and Narada Muni, and he intersperses it with mantras. One mantra from the Srimad Bhagavatam where Dhruva's mother tells him, I can't remember the mantra, Shravanam Mangalam Vishnu, or Mangalam Vishnu. And then he also sings Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya, which is the mantra given to Dhruva Maharaj by Narada Muni. And it's extremely moving and extremely powerful. It's Srimad Bhagavatam. It's Nityam Bhagavat Sevya. He's narrating Bhagavatam Katha in the form of a musical performance. And it's very powerful. Now, in front of the stage were all the teenage girls from the Dallas community who are mostly Indians, some white girls, mostly Indians, 12, 13, 14 years old. And when the Gauravani was singing the more fired up Hare Krishna mantras, these girls were all dancing right in front of the stage, but they were dancing like they were possessed by the spirits of Vaikuntha. They were so fired up. It was stunning. I was stunned at how powerful that was. And there's some video online. You have to look for it. Jamuna was showing yesterday on Gauravani's Instagram. There was some video, and probably on YouTube, because they have a YouTube channel. Just if you Google or search Festival of Joy 2024. And those girls were so fired up, and then he would end a number to them. Okay, sit down now. They would all sit down just on the ground in front of the stage. And some of those girls are daughters of friends of mine, and they're such nice kids, like our Jamuna or Ranjana, like that. And because they have a very big community, there's a lot of them. And then we had lights in our face, so we couldn't see. But behind them was more audience and non-devotees also. So devotees, non-devotees. And they were dancing like mad people also. And it went till about 9:30 at night. So it was very ecstatic, very ecstatic. That's why I say, forgetting the line of the verse, I wasn't sure whether it was old age or ecstasy, because it's still the afterglow ecstasy from that experience. So I wrote to my friend Dhirodatta, who initially had invited me to come to Rath Yatra. I said, well, I did come to Rath Yatra according to your instructions, and I had the time of my life. And so the concept of vacation was a spiritual vacation was totally fulfilled. It was a complete pilgrimage to be in the association of all those wonderful devotees in that temple and all the devotional service they do and how expert they are. The temple president, his name is Nrsinga Rupa. I've known him since he was a very small boy. His name was Sri Rupa then, where he got initiated. And so we know Nityananda, who used to be our GBC, would come here once or twice, was the temple president, but he always wanted to retire and do his Vedic college educational project, which, by the way, has now been officially launched online. He was very happy to tell me about that. So they needed a new temple president, and they decided to recruit Nrsinga Rupa, who is a very expert mridanga player, a nice devotee. He's married to our own Chaitanya Chandra's daughter. They have 3 kids. They live on Perry Avenue, which is the next street over from the temple, and that whole street's full of devotees. And it just so happens that Nrsinga Rupa had started out working for UPS, like loading trucks during Christmas. They hire extra people to load the trucks because they're so busy at Christmas. He stayed on, and then he rose to become, he was 2 different department managers, and they have a big UPS facility in Mesquite, just about 20 minutes from the temple. And so he was having a very successful career there. You know, he wore a suit and a tie. He's a big, tall, handsome fellow. And he, you know, carried a walkie-talkie, clipboard, manager, totally trained up in the corporate management system. Then he became the temple president in Dallas, bringing this professional experience with him. And everyone was astounded. They weren't sure, you know, how it was going to turn out. They're all astounded. He runs a fantastic meeting. He's extremely humble, super intelligent, super sattvic, such a wonderful young devotee, probably 40 something. And that professional career he had paid off. And then he realized, you know, in order to be a temple president, he has to quit his regular job. And there was a couple of jokes about temple president, becoming a temple president in ISKCON. One was Vaisheshika's wife. They said, so, you know, your husband's going to become guru. What do you think? She says, oh, that's guru, that's fine. Temple president, forget it. No, he cannot be you cannot, I will not allow him to be temple president. But guru, okay, he can do that. The temple president's like that. There's another joke about some yogi who took a vow of silence, and everyone was always trying to get him to speak. They couldn't get him to speak. He wouldn't break his monabrata. And then one devotee said, I know how to get him to speak. So he went and whispered something in his ear. And then the yogi said, no, never, don't say that. Ah! And he ran off. They said, how'd you get him to speak? I whispered in his ear, would you like to become temple president in ISKCON? So your mileage may vary. Of course, we have our own need for cultivating succession here. And looks like you're at Lalita. Already you've gone to temple president meeting. So you're the representative. So that's a thing in ISKCON because there's so many senior devotees. I saw in Dallas, Dhirodatta is 75 years old, working his tail off in the restaurant from 7 in the morning to 10 at night. My friend Maturanath, he helps manage the properties and things that go on in the temple. He's 77. And I saw a devotee named Rupanuga, who used to be a college professor, English professor. They have a riding mower there, like a commercial riding mower, and he was zipping up and down the street and mowing mowing everything in the park and everything, you know. So Rupanuga, you know, he's like 79. And another devotee, Gopal, he's 70, was doing the edging. And then the landscaper is a devotee named Radhanath, who used to be the temple president there years ago. He was the first temple president when Tamal Krishna Maharaj took over in the late 70s. He was doing landscaping, and it was like, all the old guys are doing all the work around here. And it was amazing, but these devotees are like serving Prabhupada to the last breath. You know, I can't walk very good, but I can do the riding mower thing. You know, so Rupanuga's out there. Rupanuga's a real character. He always carrying a 45 on his hip, and he's well armed and well prepared for any situation. I believe he's originally from Mississippi. So that's just a little taste of my experience of that wonderful community. But don't think that we don't have a wonderful community here. We're just on a smaller scale. We only have a metro area of 1 million people. They have a metro area of 7 million people. They've been there since 1970. We've been here since 1987, so they have a head start on us. Also, they have a very big and fired up Indian community who are wonderful devotees doing a lot of devotional service. So the temple is very successful. The restaurant is very successful. There's a lot of money. There's a lot of real estate. And you can just see how Krishna consciousness can manifest under those conditions. And it's very enlivening. It's very wonderful. And also we are growth. But don't think that we don't have anything here. We were just on the front page of Dandavats yesterday morning with our brochure. The temple in the Sonoran Desert with the picture on front. The whole brochure was there. And then there was the Krishna Home newsletter with pictures of Akandadi and Dhrudakarma and that other devotee scientist. That was on the front page of Dandavats. So we have a big splash. Sometimes Jivananda Prabhu is there giving a class, a video. That's on the front page. So small but mighty. Big influence. Even though we have just a small crew of devotees here, the potency is there. And it's being noticed by the world. This is being broadcast on YouTube. And sometimes, I give the class and there'll be 5, 6, 7 views. Woohoo! We used to get more on Facebook. But gradually. So we've gone past the time. Would anyone like to briefly ask a question or make a comment before we end? Well, I hear a lot of conversation coming from the next room. That means that prasadam is happening. So we thank you all very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
Where might I play that Gurudev song?